What is going on, you guys? Theo here with the big review, back yet again with another King of Fighters All-Star video, and this week we have a very exciting series of videos for you all, as we are going to be ranking the FES characters. Yes, that's right, you can call these a tier list, that's what we're doing. We are going to be doing a tier list by each color, and going through the top 5 picks for each element. So before we get into the first element, which we will be focusing on, of course it is going to be the blue element. Make sure you smash that like button and subscribe so you don't miss another daily upload. And we're going to go ahead and talk about a few things and preface a few things before we begin. So first and foremost, kind of want to talk about tier lists as a whole. So as you guys may or may not be aware, if you have been keeping up with the channel and been watching my reviews, I am a very tough critic. I do not look at things the same way a lot of people would, where, you know, might make kind of blanket decisions on things, or kind of just go, oh, well, this is really good, so therefore it's a 5 out of 5, or this is really bad, so therefore it's a skip. I'm not like that. I try to judge everything the same way, which is in an unbiased way, just taking a look at characters, you know, stacked up one next to the other, who has the better kit, who's the most versatile, how do they stack up to their peers, so on and so forth. And one of the things that obviously I do have the very nice benefit of, and I am very thankful for, is the fact that, as you can tell, I have many of these characters fully maxed out, and therefore I can kind of give a more kind of informed opinion than I would be if I didn't have them all kind of at equal levels, because obviously they're all going to be right within the same rank of each other for the most part, and I can kind of give you a good idea of how they stack up next to each other to be able to do something like this. So I don't like to typically do tier lists, but I felt like now that we've kind of gotten through the gold, the silver, and the bronze characters, as far as, you know, the beginner's guides that we did last week to help those players out, that now it was time to start taking a look at the big boys and the big girls and decide, okay, who is deserving of the #1 pick for these elements. And blue is an interesting color because for a while blue was kind of a joke. It was the color that had very little help and very little in its depth chart, and over the course of, I'd like to say, even the past just 6 months, it has really exploded and come into its own and become a very strong color. So, you know, we're going to go ahead and talk about this list here, but before we do, I want to talk about criteria and let you guys know kind of what goes in through my mind when I'm doing these types of things going forward for the week. So first and foremost, the kit is the obvious big thing. Is their kit good? How does it stack up to other content and other characters? Versatility across all PvE content, that is a big, big thing. Basically, how do they perform over a multitude of roles in all these different modes? And that is something that really sets a character apart, in my opinion, because it takes a lot to invest in a character for PvE. It's not like PvP where you just need one memory and you're good to go, at least until they released the new version of Championship, but I digress. So you need a lot of memories to make these characters perform to their standards that they need in order to get through endgame content. And then role performance relative to the performance of the rest of their peers. Goes without saying, how do they perform relative to other characters that you may consider over them that you may already have? Say it's a new character that you don't already have, and you gotta start all over building a new character. How do they perform next to everybody else in their same kind of role? So those are the things that I take into account whenever I am doing things like the big reviews and things of that nature, and I'm applying those things here. Basically, if you have, for instance, and we'll get into it in my 4 and 5 picks, but they perform very similar-ish roles, but there are certain things with the kit that set one apart over the other, and so on and so forth. So that is kind of the criteria that we are going to be using here. Again, how does their kit overall look and perform? How versatile are they across a multitude of roles in the game as far as different modes? And then how do they perform relative to other characters in their pool? So with that all being said, guys, let's go ahead and get into this tier list. and we're going to start with an honorable mention that just missed out on making it. First character I want to talk about is going to be an honorable mention that just missed out on cracking the top 5, and I feel like it's at least worth talking about him because he does have some pretty interesting things to his kit that make him stand out, and that's Winter Love Messenger Goro. So the reason why I'm putting Goro as a honorable mention is because he is kind of a unique case. He has Venom as well as Freeze, so having that on his kit makes him a fantastic character for certain things that would require those types of dots that not a lot of characters have access to, and they definitely don't have both at the same time. You know, things like the Spider Robot or Immortal Typhoon or anything that's going to call for either of those 2 dots. It makes him pretty feasible. Now the problem is with him is he does kind of rely on grab skills, so that hurts him a ton in his bossing potential. You know, for mobs he's going to be just fine, but against bosses he is going to struggle a little bit because just like any character that is going to be kind of fixated upon grabs, he's going to have issues there. Now, in PvP he is a wonderful character, and that's really where he shines, and that is his biggest claim to fame at this point, being that he is obviously able to check the boss syndrome characters very well, who are a bit of a problem there. And then also beyond all that, he is going to be a blue defensive type, so for RHD and things of that nature, he is going to have his usefulness, but I didn't want to totally ignore him. He is worth mentioning, but definitely I feel that the other character that I chose for the top 5 pick was going to be more deserving, but I felt like I should at least kind of bring him up. So, Winter Love Messenger Goro, great character, not bad whatsoever, but just misses out on cracking the top 5. With all that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at the character that made it in his place. Coming in at the number 5 position is going to be Original Zero, and Original Zero recently got buffed. That was not necessarily a huge deciding factor, but it definitely helped his case quite a bit. Now, I will say that the number 5 and the number 4 position on this list are nearly interchangeable. I was very back and forth on kind of who I was going to place where, and at the end of the day I decided to go with what I decided with here. But really with Zero, the biggest thing about him that kind of set him at the number 5 position and didn't put him in the number 4 position was the fact that he really doesn't have anything dot-oriented to speak of, and he also doesn't have a 3PG card. So that being said, the character that I put at the 4th slot does have those things, and so therefore I felt that that coupled along with the fact that his leadership skill is not anything that you're ever really going to use, and that other character has a great leadership skill, he deserved to be behind him. But I do feel like if Epic Quest ever does come out with a card for him that is going to be a 3PG, he'll be deserving. The thing that really is good about Original Zero still to this day is the fact that he is just a fantastic mobber, and he's also really good at specific bosses. Even without a 5PG, he's able to lay on a ton of damage thanks to the fact that he is a Nests character. So if you put him under the umbrella of a character that's going to buff Nests characters, then he's going to do very, very well with it. The issue with him, obviously, is going to be the fact that he does not have any dots, and so therefore that does hurt his versatility overall. He isn't going to be a character that is going to be good for certain things because of that reason. And then, obviously, also the fact that he is a little bit older. Now, he did recently get buffed, and that did change things quite a bit as far as that last point goes. So now that he's able to kind of be faster and cancel his skills, things of that nature, those things really help him out. But with all that being said, I don't think he's a character that deserved to be any higher on the list. I will say, though, that being that he has been around as long as he has and maintained relevance as long as he has, that is pretty impressive. He's definitely the oldest character on this list. So Original Zero, I think, deserves his spot here. But I do think that the number 4 pick deserved to be over him. But if you have Original Zero and you have not built him up yet, he's definitely worth the investment. He's actually a pretty decent overall pick for PvP now too. I don't think he's going to be anything that is going to be, top tier meta, but he has made more of a mark now that he has gotten his buffs. And as far as PvE is concerned, which is what we're focused on here today, he is a character that you will get a ton of generalist kind of use out of, and you'll be able to kind of get yourself through some Immortal dungeons a little bit easier with him and things of that nature. Just don't rely on him for anything outside of general DPS, because outside of that, coupled along with sometimes the lady version of himself to take advantage of her leadership skill, he isn't going to be offering you that much on a team. But that is Original Zero at the number 5 spot. At the number 4 spot, I decided to put Ryo Sakazaki. Now, Ryo has quite a bit going on in his kit that he has going for him. Big thing he has is a leadership skill that is very, very strong, increasing blue element fighters' attack by 45% and their power charge rate by 20%. For those of you who are unaware, that is eerily similar to the leadership skill for K, and therefore, being that we have found that K is pretty much the premier leader for the red element, that makes Ryo very valuable as a result. Now, he has some interesting things going on his kit as well that kind of make him stand out. He is going to have chill on his kit, not only just on his skills, but actually if you go to his cores, he's going to have increased to chill attack damage there as well. So, really with Ryo, he is a character that is, I feel like, kind of underrated and overlooked. He does deserve to be in this spot, but the issue with him is his power charge rate is definitely not as good as Original Zero's is. Original Zero's is pretty strong, but I also had to consider the fact that 9 times out of 10, if you're using Ryo, he's probably his own leader, so he's taking advantage of his own leadership effect, and therefore, I felt like it was probably a bit of a wash. That, and he does have a 3PG card, so being that Ryo has a little bit more support, I felt like he was more deserving of being in the 4th slot. But like I said, between the two, it was kind of a tough decision to make. But Ryo definitely, I think, has yet to see kind of his full potential. He, I think, in the future, as more content is released, has a chance to become more useful over time, just based solely upon the fact that he is a very strong character in his own right. And he does have that leadership skill that I think will prove to be very useful in the future. So Ryo, definitely deserving of the number 4 slot, and if you do not have him, I would say that he's worth the rate up if you don't have other characters that you're going for in the blue slot that are better. But that is going to be Ryo. He's number 4 on our PVE tier list. Let's move on to number 3. Moving on to White Yaksha Gintoki. Gintoki, as everybody knows, is a wonderful character and has a ton of usefulness. And really it all stems from the fact that he is a fantastic character for clock stopping. His finisher is wonderful. It is extremely long, and his power charge rate is very good. If you take a look at his skill set, he has a ton of bleed, and really anywhere that you need bleed damage, he is going to come in handy. He takes full advantage of any leadership skill that buffs his power charge, and because he is such a good clock stopper with his 3PG finisher rather, that is going to help him out a ton. So really at the end of the day, when you look at him, he is a character that I feel like deserves the number 3 spot. He's definitely not as strong as the top 2, but when you take a look at his kit and you realize how much of this bleed he does have and he is able to apply, I mean, he really started to come into prominence whenever we were trying to figure out ways to get around Immortal Victor in the beginning, back when Immortal Victor seemed like he was insurmountable, and now he just gets bullied by most people. But at the end of the day with him, he's a character that has maintained relevancy, and really the only character, I would argue, from the Gintama event that is still to this day finding a ton of play. So if you don't have him, because he is a collab character, he's a character I would say that depending on how power creep goes in the future, if the Gintama event ever does come back, I would make sure to try and pick him up. He is worth having. Yet again, like I said, because of the fact that he is a good generalist clock stopper overall, he is one of the first characters that comes to mind when you need to be able to kind of spam finishers in general. So at the end of the day, you can't really argue with the fact that his bleeds are some of the best in the game, and he has one of the better finishers in the game. So I felt he was definitely deserving of this spot. So let's go ahead now and start cracking into the top two, which I don't think is going to surprise anyone, but it more so came down to where to place one over the other. And ultimately I decided on the following. Coming in at the number 2 slot is going to be Boss Syndrome Omega Rugal. Now, Boss Syndrome Omega Rugal, some people seeing him at the number 2 slot, not the number 1 slot, may upset them, but unfortunately somebody had to be number 2, and to be honest with you, I just couldn't convince myself that he was the number 1 pick for this. I'm sure at this point you all know who is number 1, but you know, if you take a look back at the big review for him, you can see my full thoughts on this character. I really, really like this character, but being at number 2 is by no means a slight towards him. The thing is yes, he has phenomenal damage output, and he has really good skills. He has a ton of really nice things going for him in his kit. Having that bleed core that we've talked about ad nauseum at this point is just absolutely insane in PvE, but I didn't feel like he was deserving over the character that we put at number 1 for reasons that we'll get into when we get to that one. But, you know, overall with him, he is proving to be a great generalist at this point already. So he's one of those characters that you can kind of just take into things, even if, you know, he's just one of those default characters that you can go to and expect him to perform very well. You know, with his kit here, he's going to have hyper armor, he's going to have increases to his attack, he's going to have actually a heal on his finisher. So, you know, with him, he's a character that definitely deserves to be here, and I think at the end of the day, he has pretty much future-proofed himself. And it's probably going to be a situation going forward with the Boss Syndrome characters where that is going to be kind of something that they have in common, where they're going to be able to kind of say that they're going to be useful for a long time. And, you know, at the end of the day, definitely a character, if he comes back, that is worth the investment. I would make sure to pick him up if you can. I am chomping at the bit to be able to try and A5 this character. But he is going to get you very far in some of these Immortal dungeons. If you have him for, you know, say you were starting out re-rolling or whatever the case may be, or you started a new account re-rolled for him, he is going to be a breeze to get you through story mode and some of those other harder dungeons, maybe in the Advent dungeon when you're starting out and things like that. He'll just kind of blow through that stuff. He's going to be wonderful under specific leadership skills. Anything that buffs his massive attack is going to be beneficial towards him. So yeah, Omega Rugal, awesome character, has a few small issues. You know, his finishers aren't the most reliable in the world, and at the end of the day, that does kind of hurt him just a tad. But really with him, he's so good that anything that you say about him in the negative is kind of a nitpick. So number 2 slot, Boss Syndrome Omega Rugal, definitely a wonderful character, and a character that if he does rotate back in, because I think he has a very good chance of doing so in the near future, you should make sure that you try and go for him. At least try to get a couple of copies. But let's go ahead and take a look at our number 1 pick, which should not surprise anyone. Coming in at the number 1 spot is going to be Delens. So Delens, as I'm sure you guys probably already assumed at the beginning of this video, is, very deserving of this. I don't see another character that really, outside of Omega Rugal, could give him a run for his money, and even then, there are certain key things that Delens has that Omega Rugal does not that sets him apart. So the first big thing that he has that'll set him apart right off the bat is going to be just superior finishers overall. His finishers are insane, and he's already proven himself to be not just one of the best clock stoppers in the game, but one of the best general DPSs in the game. He has a leadership skill that is insane and actually helps Rugal out a ton, being able to buff blue elements by 55% for their attack. If you take a look at his cores, he's going to have increases to his skill damage. He's going to have a 100% chance to reset his cooldown. He's going to increase penetration by 300 for 5 seconds for each attack that stacks up to 5, which means that he has fantastic defense shred. But probably the most important thing, as you all know, he has darkness. And being that he has darkness, which has become one of the most sought after dots in the game, it is one of the better dots in the game. Being that he also has it on his finisher, this makes him an absolute monster. I am of the opinion that Delens at this point is probably the most versatile general DPS character in the game. I think that before that was kind of... That spot was occupied probably arguably by Nameless for a while, where Nameless was kind of the de facto, okay, I just need somebody that's got really good PG gain that can get me, tons of extra time on the clock by stopping it consistently in this dungeon or that dungeon. I think now Delens has become that character because he has just such incredible damage output and such a tight kit. Overall, Delens has very little in his kit that's wasted, and very few things that you can make a gripe about. Now, to give you an idea of how close the call is between these characters, if you go back and you look at my reviews, Delens was actually my very first big review on the channel, and I gave them both an identical score. They both ended up with a 4.1 or a 4.75 out of 5. And that tells you right there how close I think these two are in performance. However, I don't think when you're comparing apples to apples that at the end of the day, Omega Rugal is a better character. I would not, if I had to put my feet to the fire like I did for this video, because again, somebody had to occupy these spots, I had to really look at their kits side by side, and at the end of the day, I think Delens, because he is a little bit more reliable for certain things, I feel like he is just in general a better character. His skill animations are better in my opinion. He just has a better kit by, even if it's a slight margin, to me it is a better kit overall. And I don't think a lot of people would really argue that. There might be people that are big fans on the other side that, might not necessarily want to agree with that just because it is Rugal, and we're talking about a character in Delens that is not necessarily a KOF character. But at the end of the day, just cutting it right down the middle and being unbiased, I feel like Delens is definitely deserving of being number 1. So that is pretty much going to be the blue list, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Like I said, all of these characters are good for certain things in their own right. But if I had to sit down and put together a top 5, this would be the top 5 current FES for blue in the game. And like I said, down the road, I'm probably going to update this periodically, so, maybe say in 5 months' time, I'll kind of look back and make some adjustments and do another one of these videos. But I wanted to go ahead and bring this to you guys this week. We're going to do these as many times this week as we can until we get through each color. It really just depends on if Netmarble has any plans for updates coming out this week that are going to take up my content time. But anyway, I'm curious to hear what you guys think. Let me know in the comments section down below if there's anybody that you feel like was deserving of being on here, or anybody that you like in particular. Maybe it is Orochi Leona. Like I said at the beginning, I have not, unfortunately, gotten a chance to really experience much with her to know if she is deserving of being on here. She very well could. I don't know. So you guys will have to let me know if you have yours built up into the higher awakening tiers, how she performs, and things like mobbing, bossing, so on and so forth. But that is the video today, guys. I appreciate all of you. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.